Okie doke. Let's see. Fade black. Fade across. Hello. Good afternoon. So turn that off. Yeah, go ahead and turn off the music. Hello and good afternoon. It is me. This is sorry. This is Applied Digital Studies, a class at the University of Mary Washington. This is section 2. So good afternoon if you're watching. Hello. So as usual, if you are watching it and you are in the class, please say hello so I know that you're watching either in Twitch or Discord. I just like to see who's out there. Looks like quite a few of you are online right now, so that's great. Good afternoon. Hello. Ben, Lillian, Aziza, Becca, Savannah, Ainsley. Good to see you all. Amelia. Good. So yeah, today a number of things possibly to cover, and I will do my best to cover as many of them as I can. Just a couple of reminders. Hi, Addie. A couple of reminders, and Ryan, hello. A couple of reminders and things to tell you about, or update you on, I guess. One of them is that I'm streaming to you from a new computer, so I feel like it's coming across pretty well. I forgot to check, by the way, with the previous sections that I've already streamed to today, to see if the frame rate's an issue, because I'm streaming at 60 FPS because my computer now can handle that pretty easily. And so I'm like hoping that it doesn't make it harder to get it on your end. Like I'm hoping that it goes to Twitch and then Twitch sends it to you in a way that is the right frame rate for you. Like I feel like it shouldn't have to transcode that if it goes from 60 to 30, but I don't know for sure. I might. In any case, hopefully it comes through all right, and if not, let me know. So like if you can't hear me or something, but I think it looks like I am streaming at 1080p 60 FPS right now, so that's crazy. And I'm doing that, and my CPU is at currently 1.8% usage. I have a pretty robust CPU now, and I'm very happy with it. So some parts of this computer I'm still working on. The GPU is not so good, but I did the best I could just in terms of what I could actually get, because buying a graphics card is basically impossible right now. I mean, literally, just you can't. So I got an older model. This is a GTX instead of the RTX, but it seems to be working okay. And mainly the CPU is doing a lot of the work at the moment, so that's fine. Anyway, good afternoon. Today we're going to be talking about algorithms. That's kind of wrapping things up, including the code practice, which I have here on the screen. And I've got the bird cam over there in the corner, by the way, and I put it in kind of a round little window here because I thought that looked kind of cute. But let me know if you've seen any interesting birds on there. There have been mostly just the juncos and sparrows have been in and out today. But I did see the red-bellied woodpecker that lives in our neighborhood. I saw it in our backyard earlier, and it was messing with the bat house. I built a bat house in my backyard when I first moved in, and I put it up on a big pole. And I don't know if any bats live there. I've never seen one actually come in or out of it, but I saw a woodpecker banging on it, which to me suggests that it might have insects in it. So that might mean it's not occupied. Also, a hawk was perching on it yesterday, so I think that also indicates there's probably not any bats living in it, because if there were, then the hawk would eat the bats. So anyway, I'm keeping an eye on it. I think I'm going to move the bat house because I think it's just not in a good location. I'm going to try to move it to a tree instead of on a pole. Anyway, I get on these tangents in this class. So Code Practice 4, this is the last of the 4 collab notebooks, and I invite you to do these, ask questions if you need to about these. My goals with these is really to get you into like programmatic thinking, and not necessarily to make you a great programmer. So if this is something that you do use and you can program, then that's great. But I'm more interested in the thought process. So if you get to this one, like this one's pretty challenging. Like it straight up, it is. So I've posed I've created a visual flowchart to help me understand what I was doing, and then this is kind of the Python version of that. But there's still a lot of a lot of stuff implied here that's not fully stated just because of the nature of the way code is. So, do your best with this. If you want to end up making something pretty similar to what I've done, that's fine. Or if you want to just write this in pseudocode at the bottom, I think that's okay too, because I'm more interested in seeing your thought process than the actual code. Pseudocode is just a way of like narrating code instead of like typing it out in perfectly expressed Python syntax. You might just think of it as like, first I would do this, then I would do this, then I would do this, like a series of narrative steps. And if you want to write it that way, that's fine. I would be happy to see that. So that's kind of the last of these collab notebooks, and the same is true for all 4 of them. Like attempting anything is better than nothing. So I would like to see you attempt something, because if you attempt something, then I can help you with it. Like if it's not working, maybe I can get it working, or at least I can see that you tried, and that's good. So please at least attempt each of these 4 collab notebooks. Let me know if you have questions or get stuck on some part of it, and the tech support channel in Discord can also be a great place to get some support. So please do that. Okay, wanted to tell you about another assignment. This is coming up, and this is kind of the final of this first module, I guess the kind of summation of the first module or node or nodule, whatever I'm calling it now. This is the end of it, so I invite you to complete this, submit it by Wednesday. This is a coding manifesto. If you recall, I posed a question similar to this early on when we started this module, and you all responded in discussion posts on Canvas. Answering that question, why program? And we looked at a couple of different things. If you remember, Nick Montfort talked about lots of different reasons people program or teach programming. And then we also got to look at, or you all looked at, Douglas Rushkoff's Program or Be Programmed. There's a book version of that, but there's also different videos that he's done expressing the same ideas. And I'm basically asking you that question again, right? I mean, you have now spent some time working on code with these notebooks, like doing some programming with these notebooks. You've also spent some time hopefully learning about ways that programming and algorithms exist in our world and give shape to our world through some of the fictional things we looked at and just some of the other readings. So hopefully you've got a sense of that now that is richer, more nuanced, hopefully, I don't know. I mean, that's the intention anyway. So I'm asking you this question again, inviting you to respond to it and tell me, why, what does it mean for you to avoid being one of the programmed? So as he says here, if you're not programming, if you're not the programmer, you are being programmed. So how, and more importantly, why will you choose not to be one of the programmed? And I've described this as a manifesto. And in other words, it's a position statement. It can be fairly strident if you want. That's the kind of thing that manifestos are. If you've never written a manifesto before, WikiHow has a pretty good site explaining how to do this. So if you say how to, and then how to write a manifesto, this is pretty good. So, how do you want to show up in the world? Okay, that's fine. So start with a meaningful question. So my meaningful question that I'm asking you is here, like, how will you choose not to be one of the programmed? And that's what you would, I guess, put in the place of this person's thought bubble. And then, read through this. I mean, it's not terrible. The suggestions, they're kind of cheesy, but, if you've never written a manifesto, it might be helpful. But feel free to do something different, too, if you want. I don't really care what format you put this in. Just respond to it. You can do it by typing, like an essay, or you could record yourself talking if you want, either a video or audio. That's totally fine. All of the above are acceptable. Okay, cool. So, as usual, feel free to chat either in Twitch or up here in Discord if you have questions as I'm talking. So, just mentioning that as a standard thing. Okay, sorry, I'm clicking around so much. I'm trying to find where I was. Where was I? Oh yeah, Wednesday's class, right? So I am trying to figure out how to create another sign-up genius. Oh, there it goes. It was like duplicated. I don't know. I have to figure out. I'm going to do another sign up genius and invite you to attend in person if you'd like in class on Wednesday. Most of you didn't in this section, which is actually none of you did in this section. So if you do want to attend, of course, you can sign up for the 250 time slot. You can also attend if you're available. Of course, you can also attend the 140 section if there's room. So when I set up the sign up genius. When I create the event in Sign Up Genius, I will just put 12 slots for each section, and if there's a spot available in the time that you want to attend, then go ahead and grab it. Last week, only one person signed up at this hour, and they decided not to come, and that's fine. But if it looks like you're the only one signing up for that 250 slot again, then if you want to switch to the 140, that's fine with me. It doesn't really matter to me which section you actually attend, but I want to give you that opportunity if you would find that helpful. Everyone else, it'll just be a Zoom conference, so it'll be a split, like, hybrid experience between the two. Should be fine though. But I do want to spend time on Wednesday talking about the next node, the next module that we'll be starting, which is about artificial intelligence, as we wrap this one up. So look for that link later. I'm going to have to figure out the Sign Up Genius thing. I'll send an announcement through Canvas once that link is ready. It's just not working. Okay, so the other two things I want to talk about today are, if you go to the module page, a couple things. So you hopefully have watched Hang the DJ, the episode from the Netflix series Black Mirror. Hopefully you got to see that. We were going to talk about it in Discord on Friday, but didn't because it was a snow day, and I guess the snow prevented us from signing on to Discord. So, I mean, not really, but I didn't mind having a 3-day weekend. I assume you didn't either. I did have some thoughts about it, or I want to give you a chance to ask questions about it, or discuss it a little bit. This is not as much of a discussion as we would have had because I'm the one actually talking, and you all can type if you want, but it's not really the back and forth conversation. But we can talk about it, and I can go over some of my ideas about that episode if you have questions. The other thing that we have on our agenda that you've hopefully looked at is the Storyface app, which is pretty weird, and I hope you enjoyed it or found it weird. And as I responded to a few of you in Canvas on the discussion page, and also just mentioned in Discord last night, just want to be clear that this is fake, right? So you're not actually dating anyone. Like, it's not actually a dating app. It is a work of satire or critique, or maybe parody. The question to me is, what do you think it's actually critiquing? Like, what is the message of it? Because I think it is a rhetorical product. I think it's meant to make us think about something, and the question is, what does it want us to think about? I have an idea, but I'm curious to see what you think. Okay, so let's see. Sorry, I just thought I heard something coming from my headphones. I will say my new computer I like a lot. It's pretty loud, and I'm going to see if I can... it actually has 1, 2, 3... It's got 7 or 8 fans in it, and so I think maybe that's overkill, so I'm going to spend a little time playing with that and seeing if I can turn a couple of them off, because it's I mean, I'm sure you, I don't know if you, I don't think you can hear it, but I can hear it. It's kind of loud. Maybe you can hear it. Doesn't matter. Okay, then also after class today and to prepare for our conversation Wednesday, a couple more things to look at that deal with algorithms. So these are, there's a merger, it's a short film. One thing to note about this short film, which I hope I can play for you in the browser, sometimes I can't, is that, let me pause it for a second, because I can pause it and show you the thing that it does, which is that if you pause it, or at any point while you're playing it, you can actually turn around in it. So it's actually a 360 thing. I guess if you have VR goggles, you could probably like look around like with your headset, but I don't have that, so I don't know. But anyway, just want to make sure you see that that's how that works, in case you don't. Some people don't realize that, and they find it kind of confusing because your default view on this woman's face is kind of like, you don't see everything, and so you might be missing parts of it. So make sure you do that. And then there's this bit about the, this is the Radio Lab podcast episode, so take a look at that. Okay, cool. So let's talk a bit about Hang the DJ, which is the Netflix episode. So I'm going to try to get to it here. I think I must have closed the tab. Oops, not this. Yeah. Just pulling up the wrong thumbnail. So one of the things I discovered about this earlier when I was testing is that, ironically and amusingly, Twitch does not actually allow me to show the imagery from this episode, but the audio works and the captions work. So I did want to show this scene because Frank and Amy have an interesting conversation here. They're in this sort of a gazebo kind of space near the lake, and they have a conversation they're talking about Coach, but they're really, I think, talking about the episode itself. And so I wanted to talk about it a little bit. But yeah, I had planned on having a conversation on Discord, and a few kind of questions that I could pose in that conversation are still things I could pose now and then see what you think. So I'll pose these questions here, and you can chat back to me in Twitch or Discord if you feel like it. So let me just type here. Do you hear my new keyboard, by the way? It's super clicky. I like it. So here's some questions, I guess. Just a kind of a warm-up question first. When did you realize that it was all mostly a simulation? So, question, when did you realize it was all or mostly a simulation? And just to be clear, it is mostly a simulation. The only time we see the real Frank and Amy is at the very end when they are in a bar and they kind of make eye contact and smile. And that's it. That's the real Frank and Amy. The two that we have been following for the whole episode are simulations that exist inside of this system that they call Coach and that we recognize. So what are some of the clues maybe that point you to that conclusion? See some people typing. So I'll let some people type and then respond to whatever you type in there. You don't have to type a whole essay or anything. Just whatever thoughts, you know. Okay. Yeah. So Addie says when Frank posed the idea about leaving and going over the wall. Yeah, and Amy does too, right? She mentions that. Oh, interesting point, Aziza. Yeah. So yeah, the idea of the wall, right? The wall is kind of the big question initially to me. Like that was kind of what I was thinking. Like, why is this huge wall here? Like at first when I watched it, I was thinking like, is this sort of a Maze Runner kind of dystopia thing? And there's just sort of like this one place where they get to find a mate for breeding reasons or something. Like there's all kinds of science fiction contexts that could explain something like that. So that's what I was kind of reaching for at first, but ultimately it turns out to be something else. But Aziza had an interesting point about other characters seeming like background characters. I think that's interesting. I'm curious when you started to feel that way, because I think definitely by the end, like when they have the argument like on the stairs, and all the other characters are like paired up in ways that they all look identical to each other. Like the couples are all dressed the same, and they all kind of like, they do that thing where they all like turn, you know, in sync to look at them. Like that definitely looks, they definitely look like NPCs there. Earlier on, it's harder to tell unless you're looking for it, I think. But yeah, the security guard, I thought that was cool whenever he points the taser and she just like stops it. It's kind of a Matrix kind of moment, like when Neo stops the bullet. I wonder if they did that on purpose. I wonder if that was a reference to the Matrix. I guess it was. Yeah, so Amelia, the phone thing, with Coach, I guess, right? That's the only, it's like a smartphone in the sense that they always have it, but you notice it doesn't do anything else. Like it just is the dating app, right? So that's certainly a weird technological situation. It's an unfamiliar one, but it actually is just the app. It's not an actual phone. I think it's just also kind of interesting how, like, you know, they're never like doing things. Like they're only experiencing the relationship. They're not like going to work and then coming home and talking. They're not like watching TV together. You know, they don't do anything. They just have a relationship, and it's like this very intense and like all-consuming kind of relationship, I guess, because they go live in a like relationship cabin for however long, and they run through it. I mean, there's lots of ways in which the reality seems weird. Like you can tell something's off, hopefully, and then you start wondering like, why is this off this way? But certainly the rocks, right? I mean, Amy, and it's pretty early on actually, where Amy kind of starts to notice the skipping. And actually, if you watch it with captions, which I always watch Netflix with captions, I guess because I'm old, but it's just better, I think, you know, especially when people have accents, or it's like, or like if it's something where people might be talking about sexuality or whatever, and my kids might be awake, I want to keep the volume low. So, you know, captions are helpful, but there's, in the first scene when she's skipping a rock, the caption says, rock skips 4 times. And it's like, huh. Like, why would the caption need to tell me that it skipped 4 times? And that was, to me, that was the clue. But that, you know, that's, you only get that if you watch the captions. Okay, so if it's a simulation, what is it simulating? That's another question. And in fact, let me play this scene here, and I think you'll be able to hear the audio, but if not, you should just be able to see the text, and I can describe what's happening. But they're talking to each other in kind of a gazebo. If you want to watch this up on your own screen, you can certainly do that. I guess it's around the 30-minute mark. Let's see if I can I try to move fewer than, this is a fine place to start.
With the wand. It's got a 99.
So they're talking about the algorithm,
success rate.
or they're talking about coach, or they call it the system. They're talking about the system, and they address it as coach, but it's the overarching system.
Putting us in one relationship after another for random durations in a random sequence. Each time you get a little bit more pliable, a little bit more broken, until eventually it coughs up the final offering and says that's the one. And by that point, you are so defeated and so exhausted that you just accept it. You settle. And then you have to live the rest of your life convincing yourself you didn't.
Well done. That's one of the bleakest things.
So I'm sure it's kind of an odd experience just to see the captains, but they're talking and they're looking at each other as they talk and stuff. This is Amy talking, and she's positing a theory about the system, and she's kind of being facetious, but also I think making it a reasonable kind of reverse engineering system. Like, to them, it's a black box system. They don't know how it works, so they're speculating. Her speculation is that it's a random pairing. So basically, you take every person in it and you pair them with every other person in it until you've eliminated all of the possibilities. You kind of find the least bad match out of all of those. So there's kind of two different elements of that algorithm. First of all, there's the brute force method of just matching every person with every other person randomly until you satisfy your other condition. Your other condition would just be some threshold of tolerance, and that's another way of thinking about the success or failure of the match. If it's 99.8% successful, then she's positing that maybe it's actually not as smart as it says it is. It just sort of brute forces it until it is acceptable, and then it goes through there. The equivalent would be like you may have heard the term brute force before, but that's like a method of like password cracking, for example, where you just try literally every combination of letters until something gets through, and that's one way to design an algorithm. It's a really inefficient way to design an algorithm, but it does work, and it does get things done. It usually doesn't work in a password cracking context anymore. Like if you try to log into my WordPress site, you could try to brute force every possible combination of letters, but WordPress has software running in it that notices, hey, you're doing that and you need to stop. So it'll kick you off. It'll block your IP address, and most things do like that. So that's one method, right? So that's a theory about what's going on and how things work. This whole conversation, by the way, is another big clue that this is actually a simulation, as Frank is about to say. So let's see what Frank thinks.
Never heard.
Thank you.
Or let's hear what Frank thinks, because you can't see it.
Right. Do you want to know my theory? Let's assume the system isn't random, yeah? It's as sophisticated as they say it is.
Okay.
Right, so using these, it slurps up all your reactions, yeah? It builds up a complex profile.
Mm-hmm.
Every crazy thought you've ever had, all your dreams and your weaknesses and yeah.
And your mad theories.
Yeah, like everything in your head.
Right.
That's it.
All right, so this is another theory, right? And this is probably more closely aligned with how an actual matching algorithm would work, and how you might think of it if you were to try to create one off the top of your head, which is that you try to take every little detail about every little person, and try to make a big list of all of those different traits, and then you plot each person's point on each of those traits in some kind of way, and then you find whatever match among traits makes the most sense. I'm kind of describing it in a wishy-washy way because it's kind of hard to, but if we take a look back at the code practice 3, I think it was, I kind of proposed a scenario sort of like that, but just with very, very few, so just with 2 factors. But we've got intimacy, we've got humor, right? But what Frank is saying, like, what if we had thousands of different things? Like, what if there are thousands of different things that we could identify about each person and put it on a scale 0 to 100? These would be considered features, and these could be considered dimensions in space even. And the way that certain algorithms work, specifically ones that use kind of neural networks to compare things on a big scale like this, they can do that kind of thing. Like, they can think in terms of more dimensions than we can. You and I, we tend to think into 3 dimensions, or maybe 4 if we count time. But computers can think of in dimensional space, as many dimensions as we can describe. So a computer like the one Frank is describing would describe each person as occupying a position in that in-dimensional space, and then find all of the other people in that same in-dimensional region of that in-dimensional space. And I have in dimensions we can't visualize more than 3, but if you can imagine it as 2, I'm gonna have to draw because I don't have a whiteboard, but I draw with my hands, right? So we have an x-axis and y-axis, x-axis, right? So let's just say we have intimacy and humor and we plot those on a scale, and we say that all the people in this area are likely to be a match, so we'll go with that. But let's imagine a computer that doesn't have just x and y, but has z, and then it has 15,000 other dimensions that it goes off in all these different directions. Each person is going to be a particular point in that n-dimensional space, and then you could find all the other people in that space and then say, hey, these are the people that go together. The trick is that when you're looking at a computer algorithm that can do that, usually you're talking about a neural network, and this is the kind of thing that raises a pretty interesting question or problem that Frank is about to articulate here.
If it's everything in your head, does it have thoughts?
All right, so now you're going to say,
what? So they go often somewhere else, but he says, if it's in your head, if it has your thoughts, isn't it alive too? And when I say neural network, I'm really starting to use the language of artificial intelligence, and there is a sense in which the way that we talk about algorithms with that much complexity takes on a kind of personification, that we start to think of them as kind of like a being. And in a lot of ways, we can't really scrutinize their thought processes. We call it a neural network because they make decisions and have ideas in a way that's patterned after how neurons actually work in our brain. But how they reach decisions is not something that we can always audit after the fact and try to understand as the result of a step-by-step process. And that's really an interesting problem, but it's a real problem that we are dealing with as we start to figure out how computers and AI can be part of our lives. I don't think, and I'm not worried about sentient AI. I'm not really worried about the philosophical question of whether they should be considered beings. It's just a different topic, and I don't really care either way, I guess. But it's something that we don't even need to go there because we already think about these in a kind of with a kind of subjectivity. We think of the AI, the algorithm, as making decisions and being responsible for those decisions, and that's something that we're still trying to figure out how to grapple with. I think one of the, then she kind of spins it off in this other direction, making fun of him. It's like, what if the process is really us, and we are living in a simulation?
Well, how do we know?
How would we know?
I think that settles it.
Right. So she pinches him, and he says, "Ow," and.
Well, I might have been programmed to go out.
Okay. And he says, I might have been programmed to go out. This raises a whole other philosophical question, right? The metaphysical question of existence, or the existential question, I suppose. Does reality exist? This is a question that these two characters are discussing, and it's meant to be kind of a clue or a wink to us, because we know, or maybe are starting to suspect at least, that they may not be living in reality, that they may be living in a simulation. But it does kind of raise the question, are we living in reality? Could this all be a simulation? I'm typing. So this is a slightly different topic, kind of perpendicular, but I'll pose it to you all. What do you think? Are we experiencing reality right now, or is this all an illusion? Anyone want to take that one up? Looks like Ben's going to take it. Okay, yeah, so maybe not, right? So Ben's answer, it doesn't matter because it's real to us, and you're right. Yeah, but yet Aziza hopes it's reality. Yeah, why is that, Aziza? Why do you hope it's reality? Ugh, yeah, COVID. So Savannah points out COVID makes us feel like we're living in a simulation. It does, right? Our worlds are much more virtual than they used to be. Our experience of each other is super mediated because of all I'm talking to a camera right now. I'm not talking to people. And yet we want it to be reality, as Aziza says. Well, okay, yeah, so if we've already spent all this time, it's the sunk cost kind of fallacy. But yeah, this idea that if it's a simulation, then it might all be for nothing. Well, let's imagine the simulation keeps going, and maybe if it keeps going, then all of the learning and the connections we've built and made, they play out within the simulation. As long as the simulation keeps following the same rules, then that's still worth something in the context of the simulation. Right, so it's an interesting philosophical question. It's one of those that's kind of hard to answer. There is the simulation hypothesis, which is the idea that like you can create a thought problem where you describe it in such a way that it does seem more likely than not that we are living in a simulation, but it kind of has to do with how you frame the question, like most paradoxes and thought problems like this. It goes something like, if we can imagine that like right now we can create virtual reality that looks pretty good, but probably isn't going to convince anybody that it's real. Like it's not going to be something that it confuses someone to the point where they can't tell which is which. But because it's gotten so much better over the years, we could imagine that in 1,000 years, say, or 1,000,000 years, if our species continues to exist and to create better and better technology, we might reach that point where we reach technology that is indistinguishable from reality, the ability to create that for other people. Let's imagine that if the universe is, as we believe, billions of years old, and has room in it for billions of civilizations to have existed within that amount of time, certainly it's possible that there have been civilizations that have created the technology to do this in the past, or possibly they will in the future. And given the enormity of that number of possible civilizations that have created this kind of technology, the odds are pretty good that one of them is what we're living in right now, I guess. I mean, that's a really rough way to phrase it, but that's the idea. I don't think it's true, but I think also I kind of come down to where Ben does, which is like, if that's true, we can't really do anything about it. Like all we can do is, it's also the same question as free will versus determinism or predestination. Like those two distinctions. Like, do we actually have freedom of choice in our lives, or has it all been predetermined? I mean, we all at least perceive ourselves as having the freedom to choose things, so I think I think that alone gives us the responsibility to make good choices. So that's good enough for me, but you notice how that's still kind of a compromise. Anyway, slightly different topic, but an interesting one nonetheless. Okay, so yeah, I guess the big takeaways from this episode is to understand how, and I think this conversation is a good example of how the algorithm works. We see the outcome in terms of them meeting up in the bar in reality, and they smile at each other, so that seems to confirm that the fact that they both matched each other on this app is a good match, and they both feel confident in the 99.8% accuracy that it suggests. This is a kind of algorithmic message that we often receive. In fact, if we go back to here, I wonder, like whenever you look at, this is my Netflix, right? So I don't know what some of this stuff is, but let's see. Yeah, it tells me that Star Trek Voyager is a 98% match for me in terms of my interests. This is the kind of messaging we often see, and I can tell you that is accurate. That is, I mean, I've seen the entirety of that, so I have not. So I certainly agree that that's a good match for me. What is Forest of Piano? Have I watched this? I don't remember watching that. Maybe my kids watched it. Anyway, I don't know. So these are, this is the kind of algorithm that we often see. That's the main point there. But what Black Mirror does, which is interesting, is it gives personification to the entities in the algorithm. And it is, in a way, kind of like what happens in what I think is going on in The Soft Truth, that story by Lee Alexander, where by the end of it, we start to suspect that the character we've been following the whole time may not be the real narrator, may not be the real person. Remember, there's two of her. She notices a double of herself. And what we talked about with that story is that perhaps one of them, perhaps the one we've been hearing from the whole time, is an algorithmic shadow self, a being created through the conglomeration of all the different attributes and traits of the actual person. And that's what we're seeing here in the Frank and Amy that we see for most of this episode. If they are not the real Frank and Amy, they are a collection of attributes of Frank and Amy that have been derived by this algorithm and learned by this algorithm and then put together into a kind of persona, and then it plays those two personas out against each other to see how well they turn out. And in this case, it turned out well. So it's a unusually upbeat episode, and I did enjoy it for that. So if nothing else, I liked that it was a somewhat optimistic outlook. So just one final question on that. One more question on the DJ. What does the title mean? Why the title, right? As you hopefully heard at the end of the episode, that's the song that's playing in the bar. They hear the song, Hang the DJ. I have the lyrics of it here. But what do you think? I think this actually is the lyrics to a cover of it, but it's the same lyrics. So I just found this as the first link on Google. But what do you think is going on with these lyrics? And does it tell us what is happening with the name of this episode? Like why would this episode be named after this song, basically, and use it as the theme song? That's the question that I will pose to you while I set up the next thing I want to show you. So, any thoughts? Anybody out there? I see you all are still online, so no one's typing, but I'm sure you have some ideas. You can also chat on Twitch if you want. What do you think? I wonder. So I have the ability to run my laptop through my PC, and I'm kind of curious to see if I wonder if the Netflix thing would still happen if I tried to stream it, if it would still block it. I bet it would. Maybe not. I'm going to try this. So I know I do want to move on to talk about Storyface, but I just want to try Netflix. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to try to run it through my laptop just for fun. So no one wants to take on the question of the lyrics? Well, I know you have some ideas. Well, I'm not going to belabor it, but think about it. Okay, so let me see if I can pull this into OBS. So I've got my laptop sending its video out to this input. So I just want to see if this will work. This is more just for future reference. Oh, it does work. Interesting. It looks super dark, but I think that's something I can adjust. Interesting. Okay, nice. Yeah, so that's the scene I just showed you all. I don't know why it's so dark, but it does not seem to be picking up and blocking it through the web DRM codec thing. Interesting. All right, yeah, I can adjust the lighting in OBS for next time I want to try that. So cool. Okay, great. Good to know. Oh, and then people are typing the Hang the DJ. Okay, Amy. So Amelia, you're saying maybe panic on the streets, and dating can't be panic-inducing, I suppose, right? But then what's the moral, right? So the song starts with panic. It says there's panic in the streets, and there's a dissonance, right? The song notes that this is not in line with what the radio's playing. I think, yeah, so maybe the DJ is the coder. Yeah, I think that or coach, right? I mean, coach is kind of the point of view that they address in it. And this is, so Addie's typing too, it looks like. I think this might be kind of the key passage in the song, just to give you a hint. Oh wait, I'm hiding my screen. Let me pull Chrome back up. So now that you're all typing, I'll let you finish your thoughts, but I do want to show you all Storyface. too. Yeah, so right, the DJ decides what to play, on the radio, and you can't control it, right? You just listen to it. Like, you're not in charge of your own experience of sound if you're listening to the radio. And this song is from the 70s, I think. So that's what we're talking about. Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't actually say anything about their real lives. It just tells them about whatever it thinks of them based on their profiles and how it puts them together. So that disconnect is what I think is interesting in the song, and I think that's what the writers of this episode wanted us to notice. So, yeah, good. I think this is good. And also then the message, "Hang the DJ," right? It's basically a punk kind of expression, like, let's just reject the system, like, let's just throw everything out and start over again. And that's what Frank and Amy have to do at the end. Like the Frank and Amy, the algorithmic selves of Frank and Amy have to do at the end. They have to reject the system in order to succeed, in order to graduate to the next level of the system, basically. But that's the idea. Hang the DJ, I think, to me anyway, means that rejection of the system's suggestions, and that's what the singer of the song is expressing as well. Okay, cool. Yeah, there we go. So let's take a look at story face, because I think it's pretty cool. So it is pretty cool, but as many of you noticed, thanks, Lillian. So this is story face, and just, again, to be clear, this is fake. It's a work of parody. The question is, what is it parodying? Obviously, dating apps is kind of the first level of parody for this, and there's certainly ways in which it's funny and awkward in terms of its way of presenting a dating app, but there's something else going on here too. I have to run this on my laptop because my webcam on this computer is being used, right here, and it can't do both at the same time. But I can run this on my laptop, and it should be okay. So let's see how old I am now. Interesting. I've aged about 6 years in an hour. Interesting. Oh, come on. So this is you can see myself using it. You can see me on both screens. I'm here. Let me get off of that screen so I can I can just turn this camera off so I don't have to get too far away from the microphone. I think it's kind of weird to see two of me. So this is me. It just looks kind of dark because of the way it's being fed into this this capture device. It is interesting because earlier it definitely thought I was 35 years old. Now it's 41, which is closer. It keeps getting older. Let me see. What if I back up a bit? What if I get closer? Okay. Well, what you're seeing, you can see little dots on my face. You can see where it's tracking my eyebrows. And, we're going down again. Great. Oh, I'm 30. Yeah, we'll go for that. 36. And then as you see here, this is kind of training you in what it's doing. It's recognizing your face and tracking it, as you can see with the dots. But it's also recording your emotions and trying to give you an emoji to indicate which emotion it perceives you expressing. So let me see if I can make it look barfy, like if I can look sick. I don't know. I can't do it. It's hard. It's hard to try to make a specific face, So that didn't work. Let's try. I don't know. The bird cam looks really dark too. Could be something in OBS happening. Anyway, this is time to find love. So this is the part that's not real, right? So there are no people here. These are all fake. Let me just kind of flip through a few of these. Lucy, I assume, is not really 3 years old. These are just stock photos anyway. Let's talk to Alicia. So Alicia is into the movie Casablanca, digital marketing, 32. Sure, okay. So let's go see. Alicia. What do cats represent for you? So you can see me on the bottom left here, and it's giving me a preview of what emotion it's perceiving. The little emoji icon that pops up in the corner of my face down there. That's the emoji that it thinks I have right now, or the emotion that it thinks I have. And the premise here, the game, is you try to make a facial expression that matches the response you want to give to Alicia in this case. So if I want to say being wild with no constraints, I have to make sure my face looks happy like that. Let's see if I can do it. Got it. All right. Excellent. Would you prefer a dog instead? Let's see. They're much more fun. We can actually share some activities together. At least they obey you. They care about you. They're in touch with your feelings. Let's go with that one. And if we had time to do this like interactively, I would ask you all to suggest which answer to. What is it? All fake? Huh. But yeah, I'm just running through this as I can. Okay, if you could be reincarnated as an animal, what would it be? A snake, a koala, or a bird? I feel like she's gonna probably not like a snake, but I do like snakes, so I'm gonna say snake. Oh, she hates him. Oh well. If you could leave tomorrow, what kind of trip would you take? Ooh, let's do something really exotic. She looks like she's a traveler, right? Did she say she likes travel? Are you adventurous? I go with the flow, man. Alright, listen, I prefer urbanizing everything in advance. I don't like bad surprises. This one's harder to make. I got it wrong. So it says, why do you pretend to be frightened when you're actually angry? 2 more lies and we will let Alicia know you are lying. I promise I won't lie again. Oh, she left the chat. Oh man, okay, let me find someone else. That didn't work. Don't cry, there are plenty more fish in the sea. Thanks. Okay, she looks annoyed. Sheila, let's talk to Sheila. Okay. Hey, I'm Sheila. Do you clean your house often? Let's see. Yes, all the time. Me too. We are meant to be. Do you like to cook? I am a really bad cook. So I'm going to try to get a bad response, like I'm going to try to lie. Oh, she already left the chat. Man, okay. She says I'm a bad cook too. Okay, so the game is kind of trying to match somebody in terms of their... 16? Come on. No. Okay, let's see. And again, I mean, this is all fake. Just want to be clear. I'm not actually on the market here. I'm happily married. Okay, so what car do I drive? I don't drive a car. It's bad for the environment. Okay, I matched the thing, right? I guess you live in San Francisco. Would you ever buy ivory? Never. Save the elephants. Come on. Oh, I got it wrong. This is just that's just the API loading it. Why do you pretend to be frightened when you're actually surprised? 2 more lies and we'll let Chantal know you're lying. Okay, I promise I won't lie again. Do you think it's cute if my Labradoodle matches my outfit? What? Do you not know what a Labradoodle is? What's your ideal night out? That's the easiest face to make, I think. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Happily divorced? Gee, that's dark. Sure. Nice, but you should diversify your portfolio. What's your favorite sport? Golf. I'm creating a persona here. I don't actually care for golf. Oh, it's actually going to send me... she would like to know my phone number. Now, as far as I know, nothing else happens. I've never been called by this app, so I don't think this part actually works. But it's part of the joke. Okay, so I'm going to bring myself back here, and let me see. Yeah, earlier when I did this, it accidentally popped up, and the thing I have here is my password manager, and it actually knows my real phone number, so it actually popped that up on the stream in the last hour. So anyway, what is this critiquing? So it is certainly critiquing or parodying dating apps, absolutely, and also the really what's the opposite of subtle? Like the really like blatant ways that it matches or doesn't, and the way that you interact with it, right? You can very easily game it out in terms of which response you want to select to get whichever outcome you desire from a particular chat person that you're chatting with. The question though is like, what else is being critiqued here? And since this class ends at right now, 3:40, let me just tell you, and then we can talk more about it on Wednesday if you'd like, if you have questions about it. To me, there's 2 levels to it. Obviously, the dating app, but the deeper level is the facial recognition algorithm. And I think what we see and experience in trying to make our face do the things that it needs to match the response that we want to click on, I think we see how weak it is and how poor it is ultimately in actually matching our real facial expressions, and of course, how bad it is at matching our actual emotions, because we're not really feeling any of these emotions. We're trying to make our face look a certain way so that the webcam picks it up a certain way so that it gets sent to the app a certain way. Like, we're definitely playing the system, like we're working against it. But as we do that, and what I love about this, what's so brilliant about it, I think it is, like as we try to play the system, we learn how bad the system is. Basically, we learn how this works. So this system, this app, it's called Storyface, was created by Serge Bouchard, and it's using a facial recognition API. So the actual facial recognition part, he didn't code that part. He's using it. He built the interface with the web and the chatting and all that. But the actual webcam part of it, the facial recognition part of it, that's a standard off-the-shelf facial recognition API. And there's several of these. There's many ones I'm sure to choose from. I don't know which one he's using. I don't remember, but I'm sure it's in the source code somewhere. One of the things that is needs to be critiqued about facial recognition and algorithms is their overuse, or the sense in which people and different institutions ask us to rely on them or trust that they are actually working, when in fact we can realize and experience in this app that they really aren't working that well in a lot of cases. We can see it and experience it ourselves in Storyface, but it should concern us that these are things that are actually being used in real world contexts where they actually have consequences that can be really harmful. Misidentification using facial recognition is a really big issue, especially if it is used to identify a suspect in a crime, right? Like if a facial recognition algorithm identifies the wrong person, that can be huge. That can be extremely damaging to that person that was misidentified. And this has actually happened. I don't have the case pulled up, but this has happened, where facial recognition pointed to the wrong person, and that person was wrongfully arrested because of that. Right, so that's an issue. This project I have here is the Algorithmic Justice League. This is Joy Buolamwini, who's in the picture there, and she's got several TED Talks and other things. And one of the things that she did in this website, and I couldn't actually find it earlier, so maybe it's actually here. Come to think of it. Oh yeah, this. So she did this research project where she looked at several popular facial recognition algorithms and then tried to look at how accurate they were, and when they were not accurate, where were they not accurate. And basically, as you can kind of scroll down here, she ends up finding that it is less accurate for the darker skin the darker the skin of the individual being identified, and the more, and whether or not they're men or women. So basically, darker skinned women are the worst at being recognized by these algorithms. And that has to do with how the algorithms were trained. So if you remember how I was saying, like, Frank's idea of the algorithm in Hang the DJ is based on all these different traits and all these different factors that we as humans don't necessarily even know or couldn't necessarily identify. The same thing is happening with facial recognition algorithms. It's just computers are being fed the data of faces. So if you give it 50,000 faces, it's going to get a pretty good idea of what a face looks like, and it'll be able to recognize faces later on, and then also be able to tell a few things about those faces if we train it ahead of time to say that these sets of faces are masculine faces, these are feminine faces, and then later on it'll be able to tell the difference between those two. But if the faces we give it are consistently lighter skinned, then it's going to have a harder time with darker skinned faces, just because it hasn't had as much experience with them. So one solution to this problem is to have better training data that's more representative of diversity. The other thing is to be transparent about it. So whenever you have an algorithm, you actually explain what your training set was. And currently they don't. A lot of these are black boxes or proprietary systems where the people who have made them say, trust us, it's good, but we can't really tell that it's good or bad until we reverse engineer it. And that's something that's what Joy Buolamwini has been doing, is trying to reverse engineer these in order to hold these programmers, these designers, to be more accountable to the algorithms that they create and the potential harms that they can cause. So this is a big one. So the idea of facial recognition algorithms, specifically in the ways that they unfairly and disproportionately misrecognize women of color, is an example of a kind of algorithmic bias. To go back to Cathy O'Neill's ideas, and so you can see wherever it was. There it is. Yeah. So you can see the book cover there, weapons of math destruction. This is an example of a weapon of math destruction. Right? Okay, so I should probably wrap it up since I'm over time, but thanks for watching if you're still watching. And again, I'll be sending out a link for a Sign Up Genius if you want to attend in person on Wednesday. Otherwise, it'll be Zoom, so look for a link to that in the normal place in Canvas. The main agenda for Wednesday will be wrapping up this node and then starting the next one, which will focus on artificial intelligence. Some similar topics, but a different set of ideas and inquiries that we will be hopefully making with that. So, okay, well, that's it. I'm going to wrap it up here, although I'll switch to the bird cam if I can see. I don't know why it's so dark. It really isn't that dark outside, but it looks kind of dark in there. But I'll switch to the bird cam for a few minutes just in case something comes back. So, have a good afternoon, everyone.